AB on the track, yeah. AB on the track, yeah.
What is there to fear? I'm from Black America, it's just another year. You knew the disrespect by your elected puppeteers, but let me show you how to persevere.
Yo, what's going on? Welcome back to the Nitty Gritty Show. Happy to have you guys here today. A lot of unfortunate things going on in society, however, so we're never excited about that. So shout out to Full Circle, who is our sponsor still for the month of May. Check that album out if you haven't had the chance to check them out. They're on all the streaming services. So yeah, Full Circle, shout out to you guys. Let's see. Got a couple of things to cover in current news. Actually had a whole different show lined up today. Had a guest coming on and all of that. obviously with everything that transpired over the last 48 hours, and then my guest had a cancellation. Folks I'll be dealing with, they be busy, you know what I'm saying? They be doing big things, so work calls, they be having to travel and stuff, which is a good thing though, right? But with everything that happened, it would have switched up the show, so I guess it all, in some weird way, you can say it worked out. I don't think people losing their life is a working out situation, but y'all know what I mean, y'all. So let's get ready to get into it. I know a lot of people are outside enjoying the weather, so a lot of you guys are going to probably catch this after the fact, but that's cool. So that's cool. We will catch y'all when we catch y'all. But thank you guys for joining the IG. I see you. Drop a bomb for you. Shout out to everybody watching wherever you are across the nation. If you're watching, drop a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, right? To keep the channel going. We need all of that. So let's get ready to get into some current news. So last night was Versus for all of my Versus friends, hip hop friends, those that follow. That was going on last night. Yo, what's up, Brent? I see you. Bass drop for you, sir. So yeah, for all those that was watching Versus, that was cool. Cypress Hill and Onyx. For all my head smashing hip hop folks, that's the kind of music they put around. Jump Around, Slam. These are songs I remember being a kid, like this, like Slam, da, 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 let the boys be boys. I remember that joint. You remember that song? No?
I know Jump Around, but...
Oh, well, Slam was done by Onyx. Jump Around was Cypress Hill. Young buck. You can't help it. It's alright. He's just a youngin'. Also in hip-hop, Kendrick Lamar released his album, Mr. Morale and the, I think, what is it? The Steppers or something like that? I messed up I know I messed up the album title, which is horrible because I've been listening to it all weekend. Dope album. I mean, he's touching on a lot of things: mental health, fatherhood, vulnerability. A lot of good. I'd rather see my rappers rap about that. And those that know me know my favorite rapper of all time is Common, and that's the kind of stuff he raps about: positivity, politics. I've always been into poetry, so that stuff resonates with me more. I can't relate to having 72 bricks and all of that. I can't relate to running around the street, carrying a gun looking for the smoke per se. I believe in defending myself, but I ain't never fly no colors. I wasn't out there on the block, cooking it up. I can't relate to any of that. I just can't. But Common, Kanye West, college dropout, late registration, graduation, I can relate to all of that music. You know what I'm saying? So I know my lane. I try to stay within it. But it's interesting when people try to portray this lifestyle. And unfortunately, I see what's going on with the YSL, Gunna, Young Thug. They got RICO charges. My only advice to those that want to rap or that are enticed by that lifestyle, it's all cute until you in jail. Playing booty tag. So yeah, y'all keep on. Y'all gonna learn. Some of y'all gonna learn the hard way. Y'all just hell bent on learning the hard way. Speaking of and then going into sports, obviously we got the finals, not the finals, but the semi-conference finals going on. So those have been interesting. I never did catch who finished the Bucks game.
I know who won.
Who won?
It wasn't the Bucks.
Boston won.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, there's a lot of people that was kind of going for Boston, so shout out to Boston, Tatum and them.
Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, so they'll be playing the Heat, so we'll see if Jimmy Buckets will prevail in the Heat or if it will be Boston. And it's looking like Golden State is about to go all the way, so that's what it's looking like. But, we'll see.
This will be ring 5 for them?
I thought they got 3. I thought they have 3 so far together.
I don't know why I thought they have 4.
Maybe. I could be wrong.
You know what? Google will tell us. I'll tell y'all.
While she's looking that up, also a little bit more serious on the basketball tip. Brittany Griner obviously is still in prison. She got 30 days for having 30 cartridges for her vape. Right now, Russia has reached out. This news came out like early last week. They were talking about they're willing to trade Brittany Griner for Victor Bout, who was nicknamed the Merchant of Death. If you guys have ever heard of the movie with Nicolas Cage, The Lord of War, this movie was roughly based on Victor Bout's life, the quote-unquote merchant of death. He was a Russian arms dealer who sold weapons to terrorist organizations. He got caught in 2008. I think it was Indonesia or one of those southeastern countries. And then he was extradited to the U.S. For basically war crimes and charges. And it's still been in prison in the industry here. So did you ever find out what you was looking for?
Yes. So Golden State has 6 titles. However, you were right as far as like the team that we're all familiar with, like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson, etc. They won in 2015, 2017, 2018. So they win this year. That'll be 4 titles for them from that same crew. Yeah. Which is not bad.
No, not bad. I mean, they
took
have
about a decade, and you going back. You know, 4 or 5 times. You're doing pretty good.
Yeah, they're doing pretty good. Let's see. So, there's that. And then get back to Brittany Griner. So they're trying to make a switch out for Victor Bout and Brittany Griner. And then also, there's a lot of people that's like, oh, well, I just don't get it with the drugs. It wasn't that big of a deal. To try to quantify, and guys, I'm not into drugs. I don't smoke. I never even tried it. So I actually had to look this stuff up because I don't know these numbers, ounces and grams and all of that. That's not the life I live. So one cartridge would be equal to 300 milligrams. But because of all the other components, they say like basically one cart, it equals about 1 gram. That one cartridge should last you in a vape pen. It's supposed to last somewhere between 3 weeks to 30 days, right? Mind you, she had 30 cartridges on her. So it's kind of like, well, why did you have so much on you? You didn't really need that much. I mean, that was enough for a whole year and some change. So that's why they got her for trafficking, because it seemed like more than what she would need for herself. Then, when you start looking at legal amounts in the States, 28 grams is roughly about an ounce. So right now, like in Georgia, if you have more than an ounce, you can get charged with something that's roughly 28 grams. In Maryland, I think you can have up to 120 grams. So that's about like 5 ounces, if you will, 4 ounces. So, but once again, from the quick research I did, if you guys are smokers, if you partake, if you can correct this information, please feel free to. I am not the expert when it comes to this stuff. This is the stuff that I quickly looked up so I could have a baseline of these charges and why they took it so serious. But then also keep in mind, in other countries, Amsterdam, they got weed shops everywhere down the street, right? But in other countries, it's not legal, guys. So you need to know the laws of where you're going. Places like Dubai are very strict. You can't even really drink in Dubai. You have to go to specialized hotels that are like American sanctum. So like within the hotel, you can dress a certain kind of way. You can eat certain types of food. You can drink, right? But then outside that hotel, don't take that liquor outside to the street. You're going to be in jail. They're going to take you to jail in a Bugatti, but you're going to go to jail. Jen. Mama Jen, what's going on? Drop a bomb for you. So, that's the current news. Now, I want to transition from this Brittany Griner thing, right? Because we've seen a lot of legislative stuff going on in the news. But it's interesting because, as y'all know, this weekend, we've had 3 shootings. The sad part is, as I was preparing this show, 2 of them happened after that. So we had the first shooting was Buffalo. Then there was another shooting in Wisconsin. Now the shooting in Wisconsin, to be fair, doesn't look like it was racially motivated. Seems like it was people getting into it and it got to shooting. But we've seen a lot of legislation, especially coming from the GOP side, and the Republicans talking about, they want all these states like Tennessee and Texas and Florida where you can just carry and conceal carry with no license. So when people get agitated, they get to fighting over their favorite basketball team or whatever, these are the kind of things that can happen as a result when we don't have tighter gun laws. Everybody's always like, they're going to take my guns away. Listen, no, we're not saying they're going to take their guns away. And if you're going to use the whole Second Amendment, that's a well-regulated militia. And that was the National Guard. We have a military to fight against tyranny, right? And when they wrote that, they were thinking about Britain. Because Britain didn't want us having guns because we were colonized. That would be no different than the citizens of Jamaica wanting to have a military of their own so that way they can fight against other sovereign powers that would overtake them. We have a military to protect us. That's how that law was written. Context is everything to add clarity to your understanding. All right? But then on top of that, you have this shooting in Buffalo, which is going to lead us to a lot of our conversation, and probably the shooting in California, but that's a developing story. They have somebody in custody, but they won't release who it is because there's probably a larger thing at play. And if you guys remember, about 6 months ago, there were reports about rumors that in some of these chambers of white supremacy and far right ideals and Tea Party and all that stuff, that there was rumors that white supremacists were planning an attack on America, that they wanted to attack various hubs of black people. It seems like somebody caught the message and they're enacting it. Now, this situation with the offender, Peyton Gendron, I think I'm saying his name, Peyton Gendron. I don't really care if I get his name right because he's a whole punk. There's a lot of words I could use to describe him, but I do know there are some teenagers that watch this program, so I will temper my words. But there's a lot of ways to describe this punk that did what he did. But he didn't even live in Buffalo, New York. He lived I think an hour or two away. So this
came from South Carolina,
I thought he was a New York resident.
I thought he was from South Carolina.
Either way, I do know that he took time to drive out to this particular community that he knew was heavily black populated. He planned his attack. He even drew diagrams of how he was going to go into this grocery store and shoot people. Then he wore military tactical gear. And I want to pause on this military tactical gear. I'm a veteran, right? I've served my country. I've fought abroad. And something that offended me when I was in the military, and this action also offends me. I remember being in the military, and I'm just going to call it like it is. These were white guys. And they used to be like, yeah, I can't wait to go over there and kill one of them terrorists. And it is this. And it's like, and don't even get me started on what happens when the bullets get to flying, because they be the biggest punks. But besides that point, I just don't understand how we hear recruits in the military, you hear them saying these grotesque things. I want to go kill somebody, basically. That should disqualify somebody from even being allowed to further their career or stay in the military. I don't care if it's the Navy, Marines, Army, Air Force, you name it. If your hope and desire is you want to inflict pain and suffering upon people, you have no place in my American military. And yes, I said my, because I am a whole American. I come from 4 generations that have served this country. I'm just as American as any white boy. Okay? I take full ownership of this country, which is mine. And I have the right, you have the right, we have the right to decide how this country will be ran. We have literally paid sweat, tears, and blood and sacrifice in this country. Whether we like how we got here or not, we are here now. 4, 5, 6 generations deep, if not more, that we can track. I want some ownership in how things are done. And being a veteran, I am highly offended by these militia, right-wing, white supremacist gun nuts that want to dress up in military garb and then commit these heinous acts. They have hunting gear. They have hunting camo that will allow you to look at it and know, okay, that's not military. That's hunting camo. You want to wear hunting camo in your free time? Fine. But don't be wearing no military uniform. That man had on tactical gear when he committed those acts. He looked like he might have been a whole soldier stationed at Fort Dix, New Jersey. And for those that aren't military and it don't seem like a big deal to you, I got a whole bunch of folks here that are D9. Well, how would you feel if you were Kappa and then you see this guy who's perping? Y'all got whole pages catching perps that be false claiming your frat or your sorority, right? Then they don't know their information, and these people are typically bad representations of what these organizations stand for. Hence, part of the reason why they get called out to the extra degree. You look at the job history, you look at it, and it's like, this don't look like black excellence right here. Well, it's the same way when you're military. We fight, we go through the process of basic and AIT just for some idiot to go to a tactical store, dress up like a soldier, think he's defending the country and the Constitution. That does not defend the Constitution going around killing people. It's an affront to the American Constitution, what it stands for and what it could develop to be. Hence why we have amendments and ratifications built into it, so that way it could grow with the times. So I'm disgusted by this. Then he goes on, wrote a 180-page essay or memorandum of racism and anti-Semitism. And then to take it a step further, he streamed this to Twitch. Now, Twitch, I have an issue with you guys too. At what point did you see this BS going on? When did you think to alert the authorities? And I don't know if that's part of the story has developed, but at some point you should have took the stream down. There was countless things that had gone up before this that could alert it. Hey, this is a problem. I'm just saying, if you're going to have energy towards porn and cussing, YouTube will flag you in a heartbeat for playing another artist's song. If we had dropped too many F-bombs and B-words and all that stuff, we would get flagged. If I were to do some type of pornographic act right now, they'll stop the stream. So how in the world does this young man get on Twitch killing multiple people and nothing happens? These are legit questions that need to be answered, and the algorithms and the AI are readily available to counteract this kind of behavior. Because we see it being done on IG, we see it being done on YouTube, we see it being done on Meta. There is ways to censor the things that are grotesque in society, and that was one of them. And then when you watch it, for those that don't play video games, I play, the angle, the view from his taping, it looked like he was playing Call of Duty. And this is why I don't think these violent games are for everybody. I don't think they're for kids. You know, I didn't understand why my parents was tripping like, nah, I don't want y'all having no Mortal Kombat. They would let us have Street Fighter because it was more animated, right? But Mortal Kombat, because of the gore, they didn't want us to have Mortal Kombat. And as a kid, I didn't understand why they didn't want us to play certain games. But I get it, because if you can't monitor what your children are taking in, and then they start taking on these ideals and these concepts without proper supervision, this kind of crap happens. He literally tried to basically reenact his violence like a Call of Duty game or any first-person shooter. Because you can see it from this angle. You can actually see him holding the gun. It looked like the visuals of a video game. Some of those that know me personally, I've posted clips of me playing Call of Duty. It looks almost just like that. And that's scary.
I was going to say, you can't say that he was crazy or mentally disturbed, because
go ahead.
In the clip, there is a white man in the grocery store. This is Top's grocery store. And he was getting ready to shoot him. And the guy was like, startled, like scared for his life, like ducking. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. He literally apologizes to the guy and kept moving. So anybody, and then I think he killed like a biracial woman. So I think it was anybody that resembled a person of color that he was just taking him out.
Yep.
And then the security guard tried to
his last name was
starts with an S.
Oh man, I can't think of his name.
It's okay, I sent it to you. Hold on.
Security guard tried to stop him. He died in the process of trying to stop him.
His name was
it was Salter, right?
Yep, Aaron Salter Jr. So he tries to stop the young man by shooting back, and what happened was, because this young man had so much body vest. Is it called a body vest?
Like just like a flak jacket or just some kind of body.
He had a helmet on as well. I heard that when he shot back, the bullets obviously did not injure him. So of course the security guy didn't have on a vest. So when he shot back with this AK, was it AK-47? I'm not even sure. It looked like a rifle.
It was a high capacity assault rifle. So either way, I mean,
he obviously his life was taken. And so for me, I guess my thoughts are, I think that because there have been so many murders due to gun violence, and I'm not even talking about just racial, I'm not even talking about just, violence against black people. I'm talking about gun violence. I'm talking about like Sandy Hook. I'm talking about dating back to Columbine. Like, because America has had so much gun violence against American citizens, I think that we hear about it, the news breaks, we're just so traumatized, and then we move on. I feel like we're almost desensitized, because the reality is we have a gun problem in this country. The reality is we have, terrorists in this country. These are the same ideals of folks that marched up to the Capitol to demand their rights. So we have a lot of personal issues in this country, and I think that we oftentimes try to like brush it under the rug, and my condolences, but we need to be making changes. It should no longer be my condolences. Like, it's got to be beyond condolences on social media. Like, it's kind of sad.
So let's talk about this action and what we need to do. So let's go a little bit deeper into white supremacy in America and domestic terrorism. So in March 27, 2019, actually in 2018, a bill was initially started being introduced to counter this. It was during the 116th Congress and Senate when they met, and it's S-894. It was to authorize and dedicate domestic terrorism offices within the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation to analyze and monitor domestic terrorist activity and require the federal government to take steps to prevent domestic terrorism. This was in the Senate, March 27 of 2019. Mr. Durbin, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Cory Booker, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Coons, Mrs. Duckworth, Mrs. Kamala Harris, Mr. Kane, Mrs. Mary Klobuchar, Mr. Markey, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Bernie Sanders, Mr. Schatz, and Mr. Reed introduced the following bill, which was read twice and referred to the Committee on the Judiciary. All right. Now they had cited a few things. You can also call this or nickname this bill was the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act of 2019. And if you're wondering, I will relieve your suspense. This bill was not passed. I'm going to come back to that. So in this bill, what they found is that white supremacists and other far right-wing extremists are the most significant domestic terrorism threat to the United States. And their research that they did was backed by the FBI, mind you. And also, I posted the link to this bill in the chat. So you guys can refer to it yourself. At the Nitty Gritty Show, we do not make up facts. We fact check, we double fact check, and we triple fact check before we present you information. And we will even give you the links to follow and find it for yourself. You should all take time to review this bill. Actually, and then on February 22nd of 2019, a Trump administration United States Department of Justice official wrote in a New York Times op-ed that white supremacy and far-right extremism are among the greatest domestic security threats facing the United States. Regrettably, over the past 25 years, law enforcement at the federal and state levels have been slow to respond. Killings committed by individuals and groups associated with far-right extremist groups have risen significantly. Keep in mind where these shootings were too. Milwaukee, Buffalo, California. These are areas that are considered democratic at times. These are areas that we think that this violence is only happening in the South, in the deep South. No, it's happening everywhere. So when they talk about the rise, they're not lying, people. It's evident in what happened over the last 48 hours. And just to kind of break some numbers down, and once again, the numbers are here for you to check. They've also found that fatalities resulting from attacks by far right-wing violent extremists have exceeded those caused by radical Islamist violent extremists in 10 of the 15 years, and were the same in 3 of the years since September 12, 2001. Of the 85 violent extremist incidents that resulted in death since September 12, 2001, far right-wing violent extremist groups were responsible for 62%, while radical Islamist violent extremists were responsible for only 27% of the overall violence. So everybody talks about, what happened in 2001, but that was one thing that they took care of. People forget, before then in 95, we had Timothy McVeigh and the Oklahoma bombing. That was domestic terrorism. And they list a bunch of these. And I'll go through some of them real quick. So just a few that's listed. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I gave you guys a link. There was a mass shooting in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, in which a white supremacist shot and killed 6 members of Gawadra, which was a church, a
And what year was that?
That was 2012.
Okay.
Obviously, we know June 17, 2015. That anniversary is coming up. The shooting at the Emmanuel AME Church in Charleston, South Carolina, when Dylan Roof, a white supremacist, shot and killed 9 members of that church. We know that in March 2017, an African-American man in New York City allegedly committed by a white supremacist who reportedly traveled to New York for the purpose of killing a black man, if you forgot that story. Charlottesville, Virginia. We have Kansas City, Missouri. Jeffersontown, Kentucky. The list goes on where multiple people was murdered. And then there's another, and there's some more sightings in here. I'm not going to bore you guys with all the language. But countless times where people who were right-wing extremists had expressed anti-Muslim views went on a killing spree, killing 6, injuring 19 in Quebec City, Canada. And they labeled it a terrorist attack. And once again, that was domestic terrorism. And Canada was smart enough to say, hey, this is a terrorist attack. They didn't say, oh, this was a dysfunctional young man that had problems and they weren't curious what was wrong with him. No, what was wrong is he just killed some people. And while y'all have so much sympathy for these guys, these little white boys that commit these crimes, and it's kind of like it's overshadowing the people who are no longer here to make a change. You're overshadowing the families that are going to be at the cemetery burying their loved ones just because somebody decided that they had some need to protect their country from black people? You mean Crispus Attucks, who died for this country? First person reportedly died during the Revolutionary War?
It's kind of like the young man on the news who had the whip.
Mm-hmm.
He could easily grow up to be one of these others. You know what I mean? But my thing is, our country was founded on terrorism, though. When you think about how people came in, killed the Indians, bought enslaved people. Because the thing is, when you look at the historical context, as far as when the first settlers actually got to Africa, according to history, their history books, Congo was the first. Portugal made contact with Congo first.
Mm-hmm.
And they saw how plentiful the African land was. And so they had established a relationship, a respectful one. You do this, we'll do that. Then they tried to introduce Christianity. And eventually other settlers started to come, from these power countries. And then they started to war with one another. And why is this important? Well, it's important because they thought to themselves, well, we want to be able to build up our land. We know you guys have slaves already. So how about you give us your slaves? And then when they gave us when they were given the slaves, they started to treat them any kind of way. And so some of these countries were becoming obviously more powerful than others. So then all these powers like the Dutch, Portugal, Great Britain, France, Spain, they're hearing about it like, well, we want these industrial endangered servitudes as well. So then that's when they started to buy enslaved. So basically, if my tribe conquers your tribe, I'll sell you off to Great Britain thinking, oh, it's no big deal. And then you'll go over to the United States to work. So why is this all important? Because the reality is, the way that we live now is still a direct reflection of how our country was established. It was established by terrorism. It was established by force, brute force, extreme.
What's up, Chris?
Extreme. I don't want to say extreme behavior, but our country was founded upon extreme tactics.
Yeah, I mean conquering and the like.
And violence.
And the thing is, but we have to find a way to get away from this violence. I brought up S94 because this was an attempt to grow and build our company. I'm sorry, not our company, but our country in the right direction, and we didn't do it. I'm sorry, it's it's S894. And this was a chance for us to do things the right way, and we dropped the ball. And it's funny because already the pundits are lining up, talking about, well, we got to keep our guns, and guns are not the problem, people are the problem, but how are we going to better rate the people, take care of the people, if we're not going to take care of domestic terrorism and label the Ku Klux Klan accordingly, what they are, if we're not going to label these white wing groups. And what happens is when we don't hand down the right justice that should have been handed down for January 6th of last year, it emboldens people to say, yeah, I'm gonna go out here and shoot somebody, and I'm gonna, because they're not getting hit with the full extent of the law yet. They're getting charged for murder. And this young man was very real. When they asked him, do you understand the charges? He's like, I understand my charges. 4 words. It's been reported in multiple places. So this man we're not going to care about his mental health, guys. The problem is he had parents that encouraged certain behaviors. There's a video that went viral also this weekend of a father so they had a doorbell. They caught the little white boy beating on the door.
With the whip.
With a whip.
Looking for a black child, a woman, a little girl.
Yep. And then, so they got video. They go to tell the parent, hey, your son was beating on my house with a whip. And then the father's response is, get off my yard. He has a gun on his hip.
And he keyed their car, too. And the neighbor caught that on video, too.
All this stuff. And then, this is how the parents create these little pieces of crap that go on to do that. Because instead of that young man being disciplined by his parent, that parent instead say, you know what, I'm going to take a gun and I'm going to defend my right to say, I don't want this black man on my property yelling at me because obviously I did destruction to his property. That is also felony.
Well, he did get apprehended.
It's a misdemeanor.
He did get apprehended, but I do think that if someone is coming to you and they're saying, hey, your child did X, Y, Z, and they have evidence, I think you owe it to yourself to see. You don't got to get all mad and flustered. Okay, well, let me see the video. If someone came to my doorstep and said, your son was out here being a terror and I got evidence, I'm going to say, okay, let me see the video. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to say, I apologize and I'm going to make my son come right there. You apologize to this person and we're going to handle it because at the end of the day, it's about respect and manners. You don't get to just run around and do what you want to do.
And when they don't correct that behavior, that child now becomes emboldened to do the crap that this young man did. Now, keep in mind, in all of these killings and all of that, the thing you don't see documented in this document, you won't see the list of multiple police killings. So people like Breonna Taylor, who was falsely served a no-knock warrant, her and her boyfriend, who died. When you start looking at Sandra Bland, where a lot of these police killings they're racially motivated because you're racially profiling black people that have drugs or a gun on them, right? Because we're the big criminals. That's how they view it. So they stay stopping us. They stay chastising us. And then an incident happens. We've seen it with Eric Gardner. We've seen it with George Floyd, where it's like, okay, there's enough video evidence to realize these cops were flying off the handle and they just took advantage of being able to kill a black man. Those are not listed as part of this problem. That's not listed as domestic terrorism. Let's make that clear. That's still a separate issue. Then on top of that, you have these vigilante types that think they need to apprehend a black man because what they view is wrong. When you start looking at Ahmaud Arbery, or when you look at Trayvon Martin, these were vigilante people that said, well, I saw this black man and he looked suspicious to me, so I felt the need to stop him and kill him. Take a life. Once again, even that's not included because they can't tie those people, George Zimmerman and the father and son duo that did get convicted. They can't tie them necessarily to domestic terrorism, a right-wing group. They can't necessarily tie them to the Ku Klux Klan. So then that is still not considered domestic terrorism. But then, oh, that's right. That's another bill that wasn't passed by the Democrats because we have the George Floyd Policing Act that's gone through the House, still hasn't passed the Senate. And they keep on telling us this is the vote for our lives, but lives are still being taken.
Chris said it's the fact that all these no guns allowed safe zones don't exist, so people are walking around unable to defend themselves. I mean, I don't know. Our country just got some weird.
And the thing is,
laws.
And then like it's interesting with the gun laws, right? Because at the end of the day, the criminals and the crooks, it don't matter what the gun laws are. They're gonna always have guns to do their dirt,
Absolutely.
right? And that's because we make so much money. We so worried about the merchant of death as if the U.S. is not the biggest dealer of weapons across the world. Like we ain't secretly a part of all that. Between us and Ireland, we deal more guns than any other country.
I don't know.
Straight up in Russia.
I mean, we do. We have.
Karen, what's good? Drop a bomb for you. If you're just joining us, we titled the show "When Will It End?" and we're talking about this domestic terrorist problem we have. If you're joining us late, I will recommend that you go watch the YouTube video and watch the whole thing. We dropped a lot of key facts. I got more we're going to drop. But if you're just joining us, that's what we're talking about. Talking about all these killings and the fact that there's been nothing done legislatively to correct it. There's been nothing done legislatively to curve this thing the right direction. We haven't officially called lynching what it is. We haven't called these domestic terrorist groups what they are, terrorist. That has not happened in legislation. So then we get mad when we watch the news like, why ain't he getting charged for that and getting charged for this? Because it's not a law yet. All we could charge him for is murder. And then they find ways to get out of that. Well, he was scared. He had to protect himself because somebody had a skateboard and they was going to hit him. Yeah, I'm talking about Kyle Rittenhouse, punk ass. Oh, yeah, I did it. I cussed. My bad, y'all.
So, even when we're talking about legislation, though, like, my thing is, they've never honored legislation, right? We can go back to when they freed the slaves Juneteenth and they promised us 40 acres and a mule, right? And it was they had confiscated the land from those people who were living in the South, and they were going to redistribute it to the slaves because they wanted to do right by them. So what happened was they gave it to them in January. Over, I can't remember how many slaves ended up getting the land. Mm-hmm. It was President Andrew Johnson who had slaves and was like, nah, I don't want to do that. Because at the end of the day, I still got racist views. I just want to make sure that the South is paying, the entire country so that we can benefit. So I'm going to give those people back their land. So he went and wrote and undid everything. So those families who were then having the land from January up through June is when they say, you can't have the land no more. We're going to give it back. And they said that had enslaved black people in America been able to keep the 40 acres and the mules, it would have resulted, I think, to like $40.9 billion. So I'm saying that because President Johnson was a Democrat.
Well, keep in mind, Democrats have switched over the years. So Democrats initially was the racist organization, and Republicans back then were the liberal ones. And then in the 1940s, we switched, and then what happened is Democrats left the Dixie Democrats, right? The racist ones, they left the Democratic Party because they felt like too many people were infiltrating the Democratic Party that were liberal. So then they migrated to the Republican Party. So we seen the switch up from 18 whatever to 1940. Republicans were at the time the liberal party, the party of Lincoln, as they say. And in the 1940s, you see the switch where the Democrats now become the more liberal party than the Republicans.
But I don't like to say that Republicans are racist or Democrat are racist. I think that both parties equally have played a pivotal role to the demise of black people in this country. That's how I view it.
No, that's a fact though.
Because when so then we're moving on. We're talking about legislation rights. So we're moving on to, let's say, the 1950s. I believe Emmett Till was murdered, 1958, 59, I can't remember.
He was pretty much that was the catalyst that really kicked off the civil rights movement. Yep.
He never
his
got
picture on Jet magazine.
Never got justice. We finally got the bill. What was it, like 2 years ago, maybe? The anti-lynching bill?
No, that happened this year.
Okay, this year. So we're talking about 50 years later. Point I'm making is, when we're talking about legislation...
Still hasn't been passed, though.
Well, there you go. We're talking about legislation. There's never been a regard or even a thought to do right by black people. So now we're moving throughout the years from the 1950s all the way up to now. We've got redlining. We've got the bombs that were dropped out Oklahoma, on Black Wall Street.
Philadelphia.
We've got different laws being produced by the federal government to get black men in jail. Because when you look at the 60s and 70s, let's talk about the 60s. Black male leadership was at the height. Mm-hmm. At the height. You had black men who were part of their family, who were a part of church, who were organizing, who were, looking out for one another at the height. And they said, we gotta get the family. We have to do what we did in slavery and get the family no longer being on each other's side and being together. So there were all these tactics, and black people always say these things, but then we're all oftentimes dismissed or gaslit like, everything's not about race. What are you talking about? And it's funny because if social media hasn't done one thing for us, it has validated our humanity and our truth. Because for years, black folks were saying the FBI has been targeting us. There have been policies and systems that have been set in place to keep us back, to keep us disadvantaged. And people were like, no, just pull your shoes up by your bootstrings, tie them. You guys are lying, you're just lazy. And they just didn't believe us. And so now, when we have social media, we're able to see, this guy, the young man documented on Twitch, on a social media platform, him killing people. We're able to see people, what's his name, George Floyd, get the neck in his, get the knee in his neck. We're able to see all these heinous acts, and now it's like not a question of are these people racist or are black people making it up. Now you have to face reality that this stuff is true. I mean, there's documents of the federal government saying, hey, we did follow Dr. King and we essentially had him killed. I mean, there's like written documentation of it. And so the reality is there's never been an effort, no matter how much documentation, videos, or plea or cry to do right by black people and make things right. I'm not saying that all of our issues are on America. No, I mean, there can be some decisions that people make personally that are better for them. But I will say that there needs to be some sort of effort to just simply do right by us. There's so much land all over the country, houses getting auctioned, houses in foreclosure. Why couldn't HUD say, you know what, for all the houses that are foreclosed, let's give it to people that we know are disadvantaged, i.e. black folks who don't have a home. And what would be the harm in that?
Well, it's a capitalist country, so they're not going to do that. So that's what we have to do for ourselves. Now, but let's talk about things we can't do for ourselves legislatively. They're telling us, and it's already going on right now. It's 2022, midterms are underway. There's signs everywhere. And they're like, hey, vote for your lives, vote for Congress. We got to keep stuff alive. First of all, we have a Democratic Congress. We have a Democratic Senate with the tiebreaker being Kamala Harris. And we ain't passed nothing that's benefited black folks. I haven't seen anything for student loans. I haven't seen the George Floyd bill go through yet, the Policing Act. We haven't. Why is it that these same Democrats who are still in these offices, y'all should have said, okay, well, you know what? We have a different Congress now. Instead of letting the bill die, let's bring back S984 and get this, ACE 894 and get it passed. We passed an Asian hate bill in a matter of a few months, like a matter of a month, 2 weeks, record timing. The GOP then went, y'all care all about, y'all talk about y'all pro-life. All these lies that were announced over the weekend, pro-life would say we need to do something about domestic terrorism because lives are being lost. And keep in mind, when they're anti-Semitic, last time I checked, there is nothing on any survey that asks if you're Jewish or not. So basically that means Jewish means white for most Americans. Now that's not totally true. There's a bunch of black Jewish people in the world. You look at the Igbo Nigerians, you can look at Ethiopia, or you can look at Eritrea. They're real Jews.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
I'm just saying, like, we can trace their ancestry there, there's no question.
They're all Jewish.
But if you identify as Jew, that's fine. But we do know that a lot of people that identify as Jew in America happen to look white. So when they're killing white people, that's a problem, white people. So it's not just us, it's you too. I just want to make that clear. And while we're making some things clear, I'm going to bring up some more quick points. Everybody wants to bring up black on black crime. Y'all always get upset when a white guy kill a bunch of people, but blah, blah, black on black crime. But let's just break down some quick numbers, and then let's decide whether or not we tripping. First of all, we've seen that the Federal Bureau of Investigation of 2018 reported that 81% of white victims were killed by white offenders. 89% of black victims were killed by black offenders. So we know that crime happens in proximity. Now, what are some of the issues that allow 50% of murders to happen in minority communities in America? Because everybody's like, well, y'all the problem. Y'all killing everybody. But don't keep in mind, all facts can remain the same. Yes, 50% of all murders happen in minority communities. But when we're dealing with black folks, 89% of killings on black people do happen by other black people, right? So, but what contributes to our number being higher than that of white folks? Well, this is what it is. Social economic issues. One thing that happens with murders from our proximity, it doesn't matter color, a couple things are normally present. You have poor school systems, you have poor food environments, meaning that a lot of these places are food deserts. If all you got is a Piggly Wiggly, guess what? You're just as in bad shape as anybody else.
Someone said something about American Saxon. I'm not understanding. Do you get it?
Well, I mean, I get it, but we know here in America, that's also including what they consider white Jewish. Matter of fact, all you have to do is look at a survey.
Well, he's saying correct, but in context, white and American, Anglo-Saxon, and by association, Western European. Well, they're all white. I mean, I don't know. They're all white. So.
Yeah, but I get what you said. You're not wrong, but no, I get where you're coming from. So when you look at these murders, right? We know it's social economic. So when you see about when murder is happening, rich people aren't the ones necessarily killing each other. Now, we know they do kill each other. We've seen enough documentaries. We've seen stuff happen. We know white people kill each other, right? And rich people. But at the same time, it's a matter of proximity. People kill those who are in proximity to each other. I'll get to the comment. Let me finish my stats, all right? So social economic issues handle that. Also, another thing we don't think about is greater numbers in urban areas versus rural, right? So we see that a lot of poor blacks or disadvantaged minorities live in more so urban or more populated cities, whereas poor whites in America typically live in more rural areas. So therefore, because of proximity, crime is going to be more so spread out. It's going to be more so condensed and heightened when you're in a New York, when you're in a Baltimore, when you're in a Memphis, when you're in Detroit, when you're in Chicago. And they're normally happening within 12 square miles. Mm-hmm. All this death happening within 12 square miles, typically in a certain place. So we can't ignore those facts. I'm going to bring this one up again because I'm going to ask 3 questions or a couple of questions. In 2018, once again, the Federal Bureau of Investigation reported that 81% of white victims were killed by white offenders and 89% of black victims were killed by black offenders. So question, so who should white people be afraid of? Because 81% of your murders are happening from within. Y'all the ones killing each other. Then, white people have the lowest number of intra-racial murders, right? But that means, therefore, white people have the highest number of interracial murders. That means white people are killing more people outside of their community than anybody else. Because if one statement is true, that means the reverse is true in the math. That means black people aren't the ones killing people outside of their race at that level. It's white people doing it. And don't at me, the facts are there, and I have them listed, so you can go read them for yourself. And then one last thing, so I got to ask you guys, why are people acting like black folks are the enemy? Why are the police officers tracking black folks for all of this violence? And meanwhile, we've seen these young white boys, when they commit these crimes, they're killing multiple at one time. And they're doing it with these weapons that could cause all kind of damage in a short period of time. You have a high velocity assault rifle, you can take a lot of people out quickly before the police even arrive. So I see we got some comments. Shout out to Tex Vor, supporting and watching the show. So he said it doesn't include Spain, Eastern Europeans, or the Jews. So we are talking about a white ethnic problem, which they always fought about. Oh, and that's true, right? Because when they classify, they say, are you Hispanic? Are you black and non-Hispanic? So they have these classifications, but they're not like legit. I get where you're going with that. Tex Vor said, but it's also about which is white top. You think it is strange that America is close to a country you fought to be free from when people for the UK can be all over your media celebrating. Yeah, we've seen that. All right. And then the royal family and everything, British, aka Anglo-Saxon, but much else from European is mainstream in America. Well, yeah, that's true. So thanks for those comments in the show. We try to read them out and touch everything.
He says because the cops are in on it.
Well, and that's true. So there's actually a young lady doing a study in California where they've been doing this study on white gangs, or should I say, let's not call them white gangs, because sometimes Spanish people are part of these gangs as well. But there are police gangs in California. They discovered a string of police gangs, and they have tattoos. Some of them identified by having shaved heads, right? And these police gangs, the way they get in is to kill somebody on duty. So they typically kill a person of color. That's how they get initiated into the gang. And there was multiple studies. She's been, oh God, I wish I had her name. I meant to put it in the notes. But they talk about these gangs. So once again, that is not a part. Well, that's something that could be investigated had they passed this bill. because then they have to start investigating domestic terrorism. And when they can link these gangs to, well, these are domestic terrorists because they have right wing or white supremacist views, we can then say they're domestic terrorists and persecute them under those laws. And it could cross state lines because the FBI and Homeland Security are involved. And then that would bring up something that you're bringing up about the UK. Because once you assign Homeland Security and then the FBI, now it can go across state boundaries, but also the boundaries of the United States. You see? So these are important things that... you good? I know people be texting fast trying to get in. It's all right. We just appreciate you for commenting.
Yeah.
Just make sure you share the video, subscribe. We talk about this stuff all the time on the Nitty Gritty Show.
I know we're coming up close to time. I just want to say, so I guess in closing, what can we do now? We know that legislation needs to be passed, but how do you stay on their necks to guarantee? Well, is anything ever guaranteed? That legislation is passed. Like, what can we do now? Because marching doesn't work.
No, I'm tired
going
of marching.
on social media and RIP hashtag or my condolences doesn't work.
Doesn't bring back life.
Being outraged for all of maybe 3 days and then forgetting about it doesn't work. So what are the real tangible solutions? Because honestly, I don't know.
So the solutions will be this: understanding, and we say this so many times on this show, and I'm going to say it again like a broken record. We have to start understanding how the government works, right? Right now, there's a bunch of people asking for your vote because they want to be the sheriff. If anybody wants to run anything in a local municipality, as voters, we should want those people to have to shake our hand or to hear our voice. They do these open forums where you can go meet them. Go meet these people. Go look them in the eye and you tell them, hey man, for state rights, I don't like the fact that we have an open carry policy, or I think we should have an open carry policy. You need to be able to look that person in the eye and say, if you want my vote, and I believe a lot of people think like me, this is what you need to be doing to represent me at the State House or at the Capitol, right? This is how you get things done. If somebody wants to run for Congress in your district, you need to shake that person's hand. You need to be able to look that person in the eye. You need to sit at a schoolroom auditorium or the local book club or wherever they're meeting at. And if that person can't be found, if there's someone like Muriel Bowser, who they feel like ain't in the streets, shout out to Robert White, who stay in them streets. He's touchable. That's why he's winning in the most of the polls in DC right now. People feel like he's someone that cares about the people, who touches the people. Right? So what we need to do is, you need to force these people to be touchable. And if they're not, that's an easy name not to vote for on the ballot. You vote for the guy you can talk to and the guy who's going to pick up the phone when they're in office. If they ain't picking up the phone, you make a note of that. And you say, hey, I called you during this last 4 years. You didn't answer the phone that one time. Hey, President Biden, we voted on you for student loans. We voted for you to pass a policing act and domestic terrorism and all these things. You ain't done none of that, bro. You ain't getting my vote in 2024. That's when you start looking for a Republican with some sense.
But it's sad that we have to wait years.
You don't have to wait too many years because you still got the midterms. Trust me, your voice. Here's the thing. Now, I know that a Republican in Tennessee ain't going to pay me no mind. Or a Republican in Kentucky because of the base. But if you're a Republican in Michigan, if you're a Republican in Iowa, if you're a Republican in South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, you got to listen to what I got to say. You know why? Because we've seen those states flip. And those jurisdictions flip all the time now. So there, people, we can actually approach Republicans. You can't approach Mitch McConnell because he's secure in Kentucky. But you can approach somebody in Georgia, and he might have to take a moderate stance and say, well, you know what? We might need to meet black folks halfway, because if we could get these votes back, and if we could do something that the Democrats never did, I don't care who passes a law, just as long as somebody passes the darn law. I don't care if you red or blue.
I know you say we need to know how the government works, but what about the time period that we can prove in history where we knew the law frontwards, forwards, and backwards, and yet it was still never upheld?
Yeah,
we knew it in the 60s. We could memorize it verbatim, and it wasn't upheld. So, I mean, when we look at history, do we really believe that just because you shake someone's hand and you tell them what you want to hear, these politicians tell you what they want to hear and they do something different?
Tex making really good points in the comments. I appreciate it. So we have to do something, and I feel you. He's like, man, we need to take them out. You know what I'm saying? and I mean, that's how you feel. But do you know what's gonna happen? And we talked about this January 6th last year. Had we been climbing the walls like some monkeys, like them folks were, and doing it, talking about, I got rope, I'm trying to tie up Mitch McConnell, I'm trying to tie up Trump. Oh man, that brother would have been thrown under the jail. They just released the Black Panther this past week.
Are you kidding me? They would have mass murdered all them people for that coup.
Yeah.
They would have had them laid out like them animals in Ohio on the front yard. Okay.
I forgot the brother they just released. They just released the Black Panther this past week. He just got released at 85 years old. The brother didn't really do anything except try to create his own party. And keep in mind, WIC and a lot of these social programs were invented in the Black Panther Party and some of the gangs that were derivatives as their thought process. But they were afraid, no different than that young lady that just lost her scholarship recently. She took a picture with a gun, lost her scholarship. Now, I asked that same institution, would you take away the scholarship of a young white kid holding a gun that said he's going camping? That's going to go hunting with his dad. Holding a gun is holding a gun. But why is it that when a black person holds a gun, oh yeah, you must be a crippled blood? Last time I checked, when I saw that picture, ain't nobody throw up no gang signs. I didn't see any bandanas. I just saw Americans holding guns. And that's another thing that's going on. We don't have time to talk about it today. We have dehumanized the black American experience and made it less than white people that get to enjoy the American experience. And that needs to change. Americans are allowed to hold guns. Period.
Our humanity has never been respected. We're not human to people.
Yeah, it's sad.
We are. We're not. We don't bleed blood. We're not human to people. We are good enough to be the best athletes. Okay, we're good enough to tap dance and make everybody laugh for comedy purposes. We're good enough to perform when you need us. When you want to, act like Americans are the best, at a certain sport, or when it comes to award shows, or we have the best entertainers.
Sundiata Okoli, thank you, Tex. Appreciate you, sir.
We're good at that, but outside of that,
I shouldn't have said sir because I'm not. I don't know if you are a sir or not, but thank you.
So our humanity has never been respected. So.
Exactly, and that needs to change. But let's get ready to close out once again. Prayers and thoughts towards the families that lost someone this weekend. But guys, I'm tired of saying prayers and thoughts.
I have 8 out of the 10 victims' names. Do you want me to read them off quickly as a closing or no?
No, we don't have to read them because respect to the families. I know they're still grieving. We know what it is. We'll probably list it on on Facebook once they're all available. Just in respect to the families that have gone through this right now. I won't list the names, but definitely. I'm tired of saying thoughts and prayers. How about legislation and change? So that way we can honor the families that lost somebody this past weekend. I want to coin it as a new thing. Legislation and change. That's what I want to say. When something heinous happens in America, we need to be like, you know what, guys? Legislation and change. Let's make something change. Let's make a difference. Legislation and change. No more thoughts and prayers. I'm tired of praying and I'm tired of thinking. Time to start doing. All right. On a more positive note, we got some shout outs this week. If you want to check the sources for the bill that we talked about today. All right, I got you, brother. Thank you. If you want to talk about if you want to see the bill that we're referencing, call your senator, call your congressman and say, hey, how come this bill hasn't been passed? How come that bill hasn't been passed? That'll be the challenge this week. Got some shout outs, got some good news. Shout out to Alexandra Smith, our cousin, graduated George Washington University, Master's in Information Systems. Shout out to Zoe Smith, her sister. So we had 2 sisters get their master's degree this weekend. That is amazing. Got a master's in education, the other one a master's in information system. That is dope. Shout out to Terrell Hawkins, who also has a master's in a form of education. Terrell, I'm sorry that I didn't get the exact certification right, but he got his master's from Georgetown University this weekend. So congratulations to you, sir. And then last but not least, we have officially Dr. Jonine Ford, now a PhD in nutrition and other sciences. I know I'm not saying it correctly. I'm sorry, but you Dr. Ford now. You Dr. Janine Ford. We have to have Dr. Janine Ford back on the show. If you're not too busy, because you Dr. Janine. So shout out to all of you and all the other graduates who are celebrating this weekend. Your hard work. A lot of you were in school during the pandemic. Such a hard thing. I couldn't have done that, or at least I wouldn't have wanted to. So definitely, hats off to you all. You are to be commemorated. Birthdays, real quick. Shout out to the twins, Malcolm and Martin Smith, the little homies. Shout out to Amari Hughes, Reverend Amari Hughes. Shout out to Devion Graham. Shout out to my homie Derek Arrington. You putting pressure on their neck on Facebook with his comments, but he actually integrates a lot of great dialogue. I gotta find a way to stream you onto the show, sir. Shout out to Darisha Bates. Shout out to Monique Hardy, and shout out to Valerie Thompson, my cousin. And then also, we like to celebrate love on the Nitty Gritty Show. So
you guys you could have a quick conversation on IG, just do the half and half thing.
That's what we're gonna have to do.
If y'all want to, it seems like he knows some facts.
And then shout out to Joe and Sylvia Herndon. And then shout out to Wanda and Eric Smith. 42 years of marriage. And they helped lead the marriage ministry at Kingdom Fellowship. That's older than me. Shoot. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's amazing. So, anyways, look, everybody, thank you guys for watching. You already know. If you like what you saw today, throw us a $5 bill, a $1 bill. We'll be happily take it.
Right.
That's what helps.
Right. Am I going to get it right?
You got to come back the other way.
There it is. There we go. Right there. Oh, I got it right there. Bingo, 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 bingo.
I thank you so much for sharing and spreading the word of the channel. We appreciate that. We need all the publicity we can get. If you like the stuff that we're talking about, help support it. So, thank you everybody for watching.
Thank you, Stacy.
We appreciate it. You definitely throw us a little something, pass the offering plate around. But thank you guys for watching the show. We will be back next Sunday.
And Tex Vor, my lineage is from the Caribbean too. So shout out to us West Indians.
Yeah, for sure.
You see the necklace?
So let's continue to do the work and talk and everything and do our thing and find a way to push this work out. Thank you guys. And we will have a show next Sunday. No show Memorial Day weekend, right? Actually, we have an event that we'll be at and attending, so we won't be available. And it's a Memorial Day. Ain't nobody gonna watch the show on Memorial Day. We know it. So y'all be taking that week off. But come join us back next Sunday. We got some great stuff lined up for you. We might have a guest on, might not. But we have 2 great topics we're going to discuss. So we'll have one of those next week. So peace and blessings. It's your boy Jay DaCosta. It's your boy Jay DaCosta.
It's your girl Kat.
And together we are the Nitty Gritty. Girl, you was lost in the ether. You know what I'm saying? All right, we out of here, y'all.